Hello. Okay, The Boogeyman, adapted from a 1973 short story by Stephen King. The film follows a family that are struggling in their own different ways to get through the tragic death of their wife and mother. But once a stranger comes into their home and commits suicide, they find themselves plagued by this sadistic presence in their house. Now, the movie is directed by Rob Savage, and I'm not familiar with any of his other works. But what I do feel they achieve in this movie is they do a really good job at creating this spooky and chilling atmosphere. And this is one moment that's in the trailers that I don't think should be in the trailers, but it also really caught my attention. It's the moment with the bed, the little girl on the bed with the moon, the glowing moon lamp. And just that entire scene is so creepy, it's so spooky, and just the way it plays out from the framing of the camera and how they use the camera in this moment. It's a really effective moment that really sells the horror and kind of taps in to what it's like to be a child when you're afraid of the dark. Like, I was one of those children, I was one of those kids that was afraid of the dark, and this movie does a really good job at tapping into that fear. And I feel the atmosphere in this film is also created by the very good sort of imaginative use of lighting. I loved how the lighting was used in this movie, and again it just really kind of taps into that fear of when you were a kid being afraid of the dark, and just how these characters use lighting throughout the movie. And going back to just the way in which these scenes were framed, I think they do a really good job at sort of doing something new and different when it comes to shooting some of these, what could be for some very familiar moments in horror, but just kind of do it in a slightly different way, in an imaginative, creative way. And you've also got some solid natural performances from all of the cast. Like, they really sell the horror and the pain and the dread that these characters are going through, with their journeys. So there's so many elements within this movie that really work for me to sell the horror and create this atmosphere. And along with sort of the way in which the film is shot, to the lighting, to the really solid performances from all the cast, really kind of help create this sort of eerie, spooky atmosphere. I also love that we never quite see this entity or creature in its sort of entirety. You never really see it fully, apart from maybe a sort of a little sketch that this little girl does. And I just love that. There's nothing more scary than one's own, imagination. And then to just fuel that imagination with some really well executed shots and imagery is what I feel really sells and creates the fear and the horror. And from what we do see of this creature, this entity, I just really dug the design of it. It's fucking creepy, and this is, it's almost hell-like, like as if hell has come alive itself in the form of this creature. And from what I just could see of it, from glimpses, because there's a lot of shadows, and just again going back to the way they use the lighting in this film, I loved how they used lighting in this movie. But just from what you do see of it, it is so creepy. I just really dug the design of it. And I just love how they sort of brought this creature to life and how they filmed it. It was very alien-like. Like, you never just really get to see it in its, fully. And I just really dug that. One of the major problems I had with this movie was its story and the way in which the narrative flowed. I found it to be quite sloppy and clunky and left me a lot of the time just wondering, had I missed a certain moment with a certain character? And yeah, just a lot of the time just left me confused and just wondering where these characters might be in certain moments and what I would call kind of real world logic. So for example, something would happen within this house, but nobody else would hear it. And I'd be wondering, well, are they in the same house? Which location are they in now? I just ended up asking myself a lot of these questions because just the way in which these moments and these scenes would play out was often quite confusing. And I was just like, well, how many people are living in this house? How big is this house? Like, is this a mansion? Because something happens at a certain moment and nobody else hears it. And you'll just find yourself, well, I did anyway, just found myself really kind of confused and wondering, well, fuck, where are we now? And it's just little things like this that really kind of left me confused and dwelling on things when I really needed to remain immersed into the story. There is this massive heart at the core of the movie, and it's through the performances that they keep this heart beating. But due to the way the story plays out, narratively for me the movie was just very choppy and very messy. It's from the same writers as a Quiet Place, a movie that I really liked, and I didn't know that this was actually written by the same duo. But with A Quiet Place, for me anyway, I was immersed right from the beginning right until the end. You know, with the gradual build-up of its story. Here with the Boogeyman, I don't feel they quite achieved that, unfortunately. Which is a shame, because there's a lot of elements within this movie that Rob Savage, the director, does a really good job at achieving. Whether it be the atmosphere through the camera angles and just the use of the camera, to the lighting, to the performances from the cast. There are so many elements that work within this movie. It's just a shame that the narrative, the story, is just so damn sloppy and clunky. There did appear to be a lot of inspiration from other classic horror movies as well within this. The Babadook was one, Alien was another, and even when it comes to sort of the lighting in certain moments, it reminded me a little bit of Alien 3 as well. And a lot of the time I was distracted by these inspirations because, and I feel like I was distracted so easily because of that choppiness with the narrative. And for me that's really sort of unfortunate, because they do such a great job at crafting the horror and creating the atmosphere that you've got, at the same time you've got all these different distractions, whether it be these sort of very clear inspirations from other movies that were just sort of on another level. Like, I absolutely adore the Babadook, and you can kind of see them taking inspiration a little bit from that particular movie, as well as Alien, but also just with sort of like certain moments when it comes to logic, with when certain things happen in this house and it just leaves you sort of confused and wondering. There are so many distractions that it just kind of pulls you away from sort of the immersion, and it's really, really unfortunate because, like I said, when it comes to the horror and just creating that atmosphere, it's there, they do it. Another element that I felt like really worked here was the score by a Patrick Johnson. I really dug the score. I'm not really familiar with any of his other works, but I felt like the music here really helped elevate the horror and didn't overpower it either. And it wasn't just used as a tool to make you jump or scare you. It was utilised very well, and his score, I felt, really sort of helped add to that kind of unnerving atmosphere. The Boogeyman. I really did enjoy this movie. There were so many aspects and elements that kind of worked, and you know, it has this creepy, spooky atmosphere. I loved how they used the lighting. There is so much, you know, when it comes to crafting the horror, it's very clear that Rob Savage knows how to craft horror. Unfortunately, the problems were with the story and just how it played out. I found the narrative to be quite sloppy and clunky, and there was just so many times where I was just left confused, baffled and distracted, and that is very unfortunate because there's so many ingredients that are there to allow this to really kind of work. They do achieve that spooky, creepy atmosphere, but when it comes to just being fully immersed into the story, yeah, unfortunately, there was just too many times where I was pulled out. There is this one moment, I feel it's going to become maybe a classic moment, and it involves the little girl, the younger sister, and this PlayStation that she's playing on the TV, and the entity. And that's all I'm going to say. And just the way in which that scene plays out, it is tense and creepy, and I loved it. So there's a lot to like within this movie. I found there was a lot that I really liked and appreciated, and I could see what they were doing, but the way in which the story just came together just didn't quite work, and too many times it just left me confused, baffled and distracted. But Rob Savage clearly knows how to craft a horror film, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, they are my thoughts on The Boogeyman, and I will be giving The Boogeyman a 7 out of 10. What did you guys think? Please let me know below in the comments and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to see future reviews of some Welsh geek just rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review will be for The Flash. I managed to grab a ticket to catch an advanced showing of it yesterday in London, the 3rd. And yeah, I am really looking forward to sharing my thoughts on that movie. It was a great experience. I got the opportunity to watch Batman 89 for the first time on the big screen. Michael Keaton's Batman is my Batman, and it was just great to see it for the first time on a big screen, because unfortunately I would have missed it as I was born in 88. But then to also have the man himself sitting there talking about that film was just very surreal, and yeah, it was just a hell of an experience. But yeah, enough rambling on from me. Thank you for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.